Good evening, church family. I'm so grateful to be here tonight. Myself and along with Aaron Houston with Bridges Reentry, we have the pleasure of facilitating a class called Raising My Voice. It is a class to help women to feel empowered, to become the best version of themselves, and then to go out into the world and to help change the stigma that people have on justice-impacted individuals. And tonight, I have the pleasure of introducing Madison. Madison, will you please share your story with us tonight?
Okay, all right, guys, here we go. I'm gonna start this like all good stories should. Once upon a time, two people met in a rehab and fell in love. The woman was recently divorced, riding on a relapse with an 8-year-old son from her previous marriage, and the man was in his late 20s with no children. They were riding off newfound clarity of sobriety, got married, and gave birth to a beautiful little girl, and 2.5 years later, they had a little boy. That little girl was me. I was told in the early years that my parents were sober, great people, that they were the kind of people that you wanted to be around because they had this energy and they truly loved one another. I wouldn't know that because my memories start with my dad almost ODing in the garage and my mother always yelling all the time. My dad left my mom after she packed us up and followed my grandparents to Lake Havasu. Those early years in Havasu pretty much consisted of my grandparents trying to make sure my little brother and I were not completely ignored, while my mom drank and partied with her friends. It wasn't until I was 9 or 10 that my family finally stepped in and forced my mom to give my little brother and I up to my aunt and uncle. But let's be honest, at that point the damage is already done. I had already had things I'd rather not talk about happen to me. I didn't even know how to wash my hair right or brush my teeth every morning and night. But those 5 years with my aunt and uncle, I got the taste of a good life. I wanted for nothing, and they did their best to give me and my brother a good home. The only problem is, mentally, I was not okay. I started to feel like I didn't fit into the lifestyle that my aunt and uncle wanted me to. I started to feel like I was defective, like they wanted a perfect daughter, and I am not perfect. And then, freshman year, I got sexually assaulted at school, and my aunt's dad died, and I just lost my mind. I ran away from home for a week, and when my uncle found me with my friends, I caused this huge scene. I cussed at him, and the police came. That night, I broke my aunt and uncle's heart. They had sacrificed so much for me, a concept at the time that I could not see. I couldn't see it because I had started to build up this idea that I was always getting jilted, that nobody loved me. I was defective. I do not deserve to have anything good. And the next day, when all my stuff was packed up and they pulled me out of school to go live with my mom, I knew I was getting exactly what I deserved. I was being sent away because I didn't belong there, but I had been so wrong and so far from the truth. For the next few years, I wilded out. Living with my mom, I ditched school, started doing drugs, and partied all the time. It wasn't always like that. Outside of running away and not doing my homework, when I went to my mom's house, I had never drank alcohol, let alone smoked weed or cigarettes. But you know, when you get put into questionable environments, you do questionable things. In all honesty, my mom tolerated me in the beginning, and not every moment with her was bad. It never is with her. In the beginning, she's good. She likes to trick me into thinking she's going to be my mom and we are going to bond and have a great life. But in the end, it never lasts like that. It always turns sour eventually. When you set expectations for someone that they can't meet, it just builds resentment. And when our relationship started to get toxic, it got really toxic. I found out that she was smoking meth. It was like I found out that Santa wasn't real. It was bad enough that she drank all the time and had horrible friends, and we lived in what I can only describe to you as a dirty studio apartment. To find out that she was getting high on meth after all the fights that we got into, that was it for me. I did whatever I wanted. I started selling weed. I never went to school. When things got to be too much for me and my mom, when the physical fights got to be bad enough, she would call my father, a man I had maybe seen 4 times since I was 10 years old. I had had enough. You can only get treated like trash for so long before you just give up. I mean, I wanted her to be my mom, and she can only love me the way that she knows how. And toxic relationships, no matter what the intentions from each party are, at their core, toxic. So at 17, I went to live with my dad. Vegas was not much better than living in Havasu. I started really getting into hard drugs. I dropped out of high school. I ran around a city that never slept until I got pregnant with my son, Jace. His father and I were never together, and I never used my pregnancy as a way for us to be. Having Jace was never about his dad and I. It was always about me wanting to be a mom. I had been raising my step-niece, and the idea of having my own baby was amazing. I told myself that I was going to be better than my parents. I told myself that I would always make sure that this baby never had to want for anything, and I was going to stop doing drugs and drinking and going out. I got a job, I worked hard to save money, and 9 months later, my son was born. And in that span of time, however, my dad relapsed and was drinking again. He lost his job, and we were heading to being homeless. There I was, a teenage single parent with a father who drank away the rent and wouldn't talk about what we were going to do, a stepmom who was going to move 6 people into a budget suite hotel room, and a newborn baby. At that point, I knew what I needed to do. I called my grandparents and I asked for help. I told them that if they let me and the baby move, I would get a job, I would go to school, I would get my license, and I would move out. So I packed up my life in one day, I quit my job, and I moved back to my grandparents' house in Havasu. And for the next 5 years, I did exactly what I said I would. I got a job, I got my license, I went back to school, I got my GED, I went to college. I loved my son like he was the only thing on the earth that mattered. He was my sole purpose for existing. But the thing about changing your life for someone else is it only works for so long. And after a while, you start to fall back into old habits. I eventually made friends my age. I started drinking because it's what you do in your 20s. You make poor life choices, you stay up too late, you drink too much, you get your heart broken, and you learn hard life lessons. The problem is, I wasn't just a 20-year-old girl, I was a single parent. At the time, I had so many people I blamed for why I turned to drugs and made bad choices. I would never wanted to take responsibility for my actions. I would blame my mother, who charged me to watch my son when she never paid my grandparents or my aunt and uncle $1 for all they did for my brother and I. I blamed my grandparents for always helping my mother, even though she was on drugs, and always making me feel like I could never work hard enough. I'm always stacking these expectations that I couldn't seem to reach, and as my resentments built towards them, I became more and more selfish. I stopped putting my son first. I stopped caring about my future. I stopped trying to be the best version of me. Instead, all I wanted to do was escape the house where I felt trapped and miserable, escape the failures of my poor choices, escape the feeling of loneliness that came from being abandoned by the people I care about most. I found the escape I was looking for in drugs and alcohol, and I became a monster. I lost my job in my apartment. I only saw my son occasionally. I was doing to my baby exactly what my mom and dad did to me, something that I swore I would never do. And sometimes you just can't lie to yourself. Sometimes you must be able to look in the mirror and tell yourself that you're not the right person for the job and that the people in your life deserve better. And I have never had a problem with telling myself that I'm not good enough. So I chose to give my son to his parents, his father's parents, his grandpa and his step-grandma. The only caveat would be that I wouldn't be able to communicate with him for a very long time. They wanted to make sure that the therapist thought it was going to be okay and that his emotional development wasn't going to be affected. And I understood what they meant. I mean, I am a child of trauma. I could have grown up differently if my mom had left me with my aunt and uncle from a young age, but she had a hard time looking in the mirror. I wasn't going to fight them. I knew he needed better, and so I walked away. And when I say that I walked away, I don't just mean from my son. I mean from my entire life, from my family, from my hometown, from everyone. I hurt so many people in one move. My grandparents had done so much for me my whole life. And when I took Jace from them and gave him to his grandparents, it broke their heart. My grandma was never what you would say 100% healthy. But when Jace and I were gone, she gave up. And she died a month later. This was the woman who raised me most of my life, who took me to Girl Scouts and taught me to cook and watched me graduate and loved my son like he was the light of her life. And when she passed away, I never went to her funeral, mostly because I felt like it was my fault. The last thing that she ever said to me was that I abandoned my son and she would never forgive me. I didn't feel right going, not just that, but I felt like my family would attack me, blame me for how things turned out, and grief makes people do horrible things sometimes. And I am no exception. For the next 3 years I ran from my life. I found my escape from dealing with anything, and I found it best in heroin. They call it chasing the dragon because it's like aimlessly trying to find a mythical creature. Using is a futile pursuit of achieving that first high, the one that got you hooked, the one that made it so the world didn't seem so horrid, and for an hour you could pretend like you didn't single-handedly destroy your entire life. That never happens. Instead, what happens As you dig a deeper hole every time you use, a little more of your soul gets stripped away. You become this shell of who you used to be. You have no cares about anything other than getting your next fix. I told my stepmom and my dad to stop looking for me at one point. They were driving up and down the streets in the most horrible parts of town, and I told them to stop trying to find me. I said I couldn't look at myself right now, and I'm not going to let you either. I can remember my stepmom telling me how terrified she was that I would be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And she was right, of course. But even in this time of my life, when I had turned my back on God, he still had never stopped watching out for me. He saved me from almost being shot in a drive-by house shooting. When I was drugged, kidnapped, and sexually abused, he saved me. I was on a fast track to death, and he never stopped trying to show me that I didn't have to die. I eventually moved back to Lake Havasu, and at this point in my life, I'm selling drugs to support my habit. I have been arrested for car theft and am on probation. I have been violated for not complying with my probation twice and reinstated. I cannot pass a drug test because I am never sober. I have no real place to live, and I rarely eat. My habit has gotten so bad that my best friend has cried to me many times that she thinks I'm going to die or the house is going to get raided. My probation officer has told me the places that I am staying are being watched by the police and that I need to find a better place to stay, that I'm hanging around the wrong people. And all I can think when he says that is that I am the wrong people that he's talking about. At my lowest moment, I can remember waking up and running to my bathroom, throwing up blood in my toilet. I had started using anxiety medication along with my opiate use, and it was slowly eating away at my stomach. It's basically killing me. I just remember laying there with my head on the toilet, breathing hard. My whole body hurts. I have cold sweats, and I will never forget this feeling. I am completely broken. I hate myself so much. I was so tired of trying to stay high and sick of wanting to die. I just wanted to be over. And 3 days later, I got arrested for sales of narcotics. I had never in all my life talked to God. I never asked for anything. I didn't think things like that mattered. No one listens to please. I knew that there was no magic genie who's granting wishes. But as I laid in my bunk in county one night staring at my ceiling, I pleaded with anyone who would listen or care to help me, to save me, to give me the time I needed to find Madison again, because I miss her. And if someone didn't save me, I was just gonna give up. And all of a sudden, it felt like maybe someone was listening, because the judge I saw was the one I had seen for all my probation violations. He knew that I had a drug problem, and I had asked him for my last reinstatement to send me to rehab, that I had a problem, and this time he gave me what I really needed. I was sentenced to 7 years in the Department of Corrections at Perryville. And I'll be honest with you, I have never been unhappy about the time that I was sentenced to. I have never once felt that I was done some sort of injustice. When I asked to be saved, I asked for the time to heal. I didn't put a number on it. I asked for what I needed. And for those of you in this room who have an intimate relationship with God, you know that when you finally open your heart to Him and you allow Him to show you the path, He delivers every time with exactly what you need. And the time I spent in prison was exactly what I needed to find Madison again. It was not easy. It took years of crawling back to myself, painstakingly dragging my feet back to just the basic things like showering daily, brushing my teeth, and caring about taking care of me and setting boundaries. Understanding that I should never not be treated right. I don't have to lower my standards or settle for anything less than I deserve. I had to learn how to not be only physically healthy, but mentally as well. I learned to work hard and strive for better again. But the most important thing I did was find my family and the love I had always been looking for. And you might think that I found that love I needed in my life for my family, but the plot twist is that you would be wrong. The love I found was the love for myself. I had to really start to love me again. I had to find my acceptance in me. I was told once that I've always lived my life trying to prove that I'm worthy of love, friendship, jobs, money, whatever. It wasn't until that moment that I realized that they're right. I've spent most of my life trying to prove that I was better than my mom, that I deserved to be loved and that I could live my life on my own, however I wanted, and no one was going to tell me differently. And I think about how I see myself in the mirror today and the words I say to that person staring back. Worthiness is not something I earned by proving myself to others. It's something I uncovered within my own soul. It's about recognizing your peace, your connection, your values, and your kindness. No matter where my life will take me now or how deep my struggles run, I see myself differently, and because of that, my family sees me differently. Our relationship is better because I know they love me, and all they have ever wanted for me is to have a better life. My life is not perfect, and for the first time I can honestly say I know no one expects me to be. If there is anything anyone can take from the life I lived and the version I have finally truly started living, it would be that you don't need anyone to make you whole. God gave you all the most wonderful gifts. He put them in you from the moment you were born. You are perfectly imperfect, and that's how it's supposed to be. We have a running saying in my little group: we strive for progress around these parts and not perfection. We progress every day towards the big finale of our lives, and someday it will be written for me. And I hope you are all there to read about it, because I know that when the ink dries on the page, your first words will be, God made sure that girl really got to live.